Have you ever stopped to think that maybe the history books, the ones on your shelf, from ancient Rome all the way to the Renaissance, what if they're more fiction than, well, fact?
It's a provocative thought, isn't it?
It really is. Like, what if that whole grand narrative we learned in school was actually a carefully built illusion, not shaped by chance, but by some hidden group, maybe a secret society, engineering our past?
That's precisely the territory we're stepping into today.
Okay, so today we're diving into a stack of sources you sent over. Our main guide here is a book called Encrypted Reality, Interpreting History's Patterns by Michael Anthony Alberta. And let me tell you, it lays out a theory that is, well, it's audacious. It really makes you question the foundations of everything you thought you knew about history.
It does, and what's really intriguing right from the start is its core claim. It argues that mainstream history, the story we generally accept, isn't some organic unfolding of events. Instead, it's presented as a deliberately fabricated narrative, a grand illusion meticulously put together during the Renaissance.
By whom, though?
By a covert network, a group of intellectuals the book calls the Watch. And right at the center of this whole alleged conspiracy is a name most people know, but in a totally different context. Leon Battista Alberti.
Alberti. The Renaissance man, artist, architect, that Alberti.
The very same. Traditionally, yeah, he's celebrated as this brilliant polymath, artist, architect, philosopher. But here, he's completely reimagined. He's portrayed as the ultimate master spy. Codenamed G, according to this source. And his incredible talents, art, architecture, even cryptography, weren't just for creative expression. No. The theory says they were systematically used as tools. Tools for manipulation, reshaping how people perceive the past.
How would that even work? Using art and architecture to fake history?
Well, think about it. Controlling the symbols, the designs, the very structure of buildings people see as ancient, and cryptography, well, that speaks for itself in terms of hidden messages. And a key part of their strategy, the theory suggests, was jumping on the potential of the printing press.
Ah, okay. That makes sense. Mass communication.
Exactly. But not for enlightenment, necessarily. It was used to mass-produce forged ancient texts, creating this distorted timeline designed very carefully to serve certain political agendas, like, for instance, the Vatican's.
Wow. So the ultimate claim here is that history itself, it's not a record, it's basically an encrypted message.
That's the core assertion. And it gets even more specific. There's this concept called phantom reflections.
Phantom reflections.
Yeah. The idea is that many events, particularly plagues that we date before the 14th century, things we see as separate historical moments, might actually be just echoes or phantom reflections of the one big one, the Black Death, retroactively inserted into the historical record.
Wait, so things like the Plague of Justinian or others, they might not have happened as described, or at all.
The theory suggests they might be constructs, essentially copies or exaggerations based on the 14th century Black Death. And the purpose? To create this illusion of deep antiquity.
A false sense of a really, really long past.
Precisely. A vast ancient history that didn't truly exist in the way it's portrayed. And this fabricated past then served a crucial function.
Which was?
It justified the so-called rediscovery of knowledge during the Renaissance. It created this narrative of forgotten wisdom suddenly resurfacing, perfectly timed, of course, to fit the Watch's agenda and make their newly introduced or fabricated knowledge seem like a return to ancient glory.
Okay. Prepare to have your assumptions seriously challenged, folks. This deep dive.
Yeah.
It's not just exploring some fringe theory, it's looking at a really detailed alternative history, one that connects dots you probably never thought were connectable, linking figures, events, across continents, across centuries.
Yeah, it really makes you think about how a single, incredibly skilled operative might have, literally shaped our understanding of everything.
Right. Let's start with the architects themselves, the Watch. The sources paint them not just as some shadowy club, but as the actual engineers of our perceived past. They supposedly emerged during the Renaissance in Europe, and their main goal wasn't just influencing how history was written. It was to actively build mainstream history from the ground up. They weren't just reporters. They were like the master architects of a fake timeline.
And if we build on that point, let's reconsider Alberti, his traditional image. Quintessential Renaissance man, right? Brilliant artist, architect, thinker. His work celebrated human potential, classical ideals. We revere his books on architecture, his art.
Yeah, a giant of the era.
But the book offers this completely radical view. Alberti as a master spy, codenamed G. His famous skills art, architecture, and especially cryptography weren't just for creativity or study.
Okay.
They were tools, systematically used for strategic manipulation of how history was seen. He wasn't just watching the world, he was, according to this theory, designing how we understand it, creating this cohesive but totally manufactured historical story. His wide-ranging abilities were absolutely essential for weaving this whole thing together.
Which brings us back to the printing press. And this is where it really flips the script on conventional history, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
Imagine the printing press. We think of it as this beacon of enlightenment, spreading truth far and wide.
The democratizer of knowledge.
Exactly. But in this theory, it's a weapon, a tool for systematic deception. The invention of movable type around the mid-1400s was crucial to how the watch operated. Not just spreading existing ideas, but mass-producing fake ancient texts.
Think about the power of that. Suddenly you can churn out documents that look ancient, previously only painstakingly copied by hand.
Yeah, you could flood the market, basically.
Precisely, allowing the watch to create and push out a completely distorted historical timeline on an industrial scale. And who benefits? Powerful patrons like the Vatican who get a history rewritten to perfectly match their current political and religious needs.
So history has a cipher. If that's the case, what's the hidden message?
Yeah.
Who was it for? And why hide it?
Those are the million-dollar questions, aren't they? And this idea of phantom reflections is key to how it was supposedly hidden. The suggestion is many events, especially devastating plagues dated before the 14th century, they aren't standalone occurrences.
Right, you see echoes of the Black Death.
Exactly. Retroactively inserted phantom reflections of that one massive catastrophic event.
Can you give an example? Like, how would that work?
Okay, take the Black Death itself, mid-14th century. It ripped through Europe, Asia, Africa. Devastating. The theory argues the watch took the details, the impact, the story of this one pandemic. And through their forged texts, they essentially copied and pasted elements of it, maybe even whole invented plague events, into earlier centuries.
To make the past seem longer and more calamitous?
Precisely. To create that false sense of deep antiquity. By littering the pre-14th century timeline with these dramatic but potentially fictional or heavily exaggerated events, they built an artificial historical depth.
And that justified the Renaissance rediscovery.
Exactly. It created the illusion of a deep, forgotten past packed with lost wisdom, which then conveniently reappeared just when the watch needed to legitimize their own narratives and control the flow of information. It makes the Renaissance seem like a natural recovery, not a constructed one.
It's quite a narrative arc for the watch itself, too. They supposedly started with this goal of, what was it, humanity's perpetuation.
That's the term used, yes. Seemingly a somewhat rational, if hidden, objective.
But then it changes. After Alberti's supposed death, or maybe he just banned it strategically, the organization transforms.
That's the argument. What was in the 15th century maybe an entity trying to guide society from the shadows, perhaps with some kind of long-term plan, it devolved. In the 16th century, it became more overtly self-serving, even corrupt.
How so?
This newer faction, the theory claims, basically hijacked Alberti's legacy, systematically reattributed his incredible achievements to other people, and twisted his visionary plans to fit their own, often darker goals.
So a noble, maybe misguided beginning turned sinister.
That's the trajectory presented. A shift from grand strategy to internal power plays and potentially nefarious objectives.
And this idea of the eternal handler fits in here. It's not just about Alberti, the person.
Exactly. The theory proposes that the whole concept of the Renaissance man, which we usually apply to individuals like Alberti, isn't about one person at all.
Okay.
Instead, it's this recurring role, an eternal handler. A persistent intelligence operative who keeps reappearing across different times and places under different identities.
Like a template figure.
Sort of. Less a fixed person, more like a recurring mythological motif. Enduring cycles of death and resurrection within the narrative. It embodies these timeless themes you see everywhere, nature's cycles, renewal, sacrifice, rebirth. It suggests this continuous thread of influence, where the operative isn't just one guy, but an enduring function within the secret organization. Always there, guiding, manipulating.
That takes a pretty dark turn with the idea of weaponizing plagues.
It does. The 16th century, according to these sources, saw the horrifying weaponization of global disasters, especially the plague.
Not just taking advantage of chaos, but actively causing or worsening it.
Deliberate exacerbations orchestrated by an unknown spy master they call the Mole.
The Mole.
His Mole.
Yeah.
His actions were calculated. Designed to destabilize existing power structures across continents, and the goal, to secure a new, dominant faction within the watch itself.
So internal power struggles played out using real-world catastrophes.
That's the chilling implication. Imagine someone actively manipulating outbreaks, maybe disrupting trade routes known to carry disease, interfering with sanitation efforts, perhaps even intentionally spreading infected materials, all for geopolitical gain. Reshaping global power by leveraging mass human suffering.
That's profoundly disturbing.
It is, and it leads to the question, was the age of exploration really about discovery, or was it a guided expansion, a way to realize a pre-planned global blueprint designed by the watch?
You mean Columbus, Magellan, all of that was potentially directed?
The theory suggests these massive changes, driven by the mole, also fueled this unprecedented era of global exploration. The watch, through cultural integration and historical repatterning, actively guided humanity towards these transcontinental connections, strategic redistribution of resources. It's argued this grand design was actually fulfilling Alberti's original vision for a fully interconnected global society, just perhaps achieved through more brutal means by his successors.
And Alberti's own background, or lack thereof, plays into this. His unknown mother, his father's exile.
Yes, those aren't seen as just historical mysteries or gaps in the record. They're interpreted as deliberate operational strategies.
How so?
By creating this veil of obscurity around his immediate European origins, ensuring no clear, traceable family line, the watch makes sure their top operative, their G, couldn't be easily pinned down or linked to a public genealogy.
So he can move more freely.
Exactly. A clear connection might have exposed the watch's true age, its deep historical roots, and its continuous manipulation of world events over centuries. He needed to be untraceable, a ghost in the historical machine, keeping the watch's real influence hidden.
Okay, this next part is where it really rams up the audacity, I think. The claim that Alberti, Nezahualcoyotl, and Pachacuti are the same person.
Yes, one mind wearing different faces. That's the phrase used. It's possibly the most challenging assertion in the entire theory.
Nezahualcoyotl, the philosopher-king, founder of the Aztec Triple Alliance, and Pachacuti, the legendary Inca emperor who transformed Cusco. They were Alberti.
The theory posits that this single G operative moved between continents. He assumed these new names, new identities, and systematically shaped history in both Mesoamerica and the Andes, just as he did in Europe.
That throws out centuries of separate historical narratives for these major civilizations.
Completely. It suggests a single, unified intelligence orchestrating things across supposedly disconnected worlds.
What's the evidence? How do they even begin to connect these figures?
Well, let's look at the timing. It's a known historical point that the Aztec Empire in Mexico and the Inca Empire in Peru, they both essentially kick off almost simultaneously, conventionally dated within just 10 years of each other in the 15th century.
Okay, that is quite close.
The author deems that synchronicity far too precise to be coincidental. And furthermore, all three of these polymaths, Alberti, Pachacuti, Nezahualcoyotl, are conventionally dated as living at the exact same time, roughly 1402 to 1472.
Three pivotal figures, worlds apart, same lifespan, same period of major activity, and the empires starting almost together. Okay, viewed through this lens, that pattern does look suspicious.
It demands a closer look, doesn't it? And it makes you ask, are these just historical quirks or deliberate details planted to hide a single coordinated identity for G?
So, beyond the timing.
Even though Pachacuti's birth date isn't precisely documented in the standard records, the book highlights numerous shared characteristics presented as compelling evidence for one multifaceted operative. Think about Alberti himself. He wasn't born Leon. He adopted Leon Battista later in the 1420s. He was also Lorenzo Alberti's illegitimate son, reportedly facing attempts to disinherit him, and even an uncle allegedly trying to kill him.
Dramatic stuff.
The theory suggests these biographical details, often seen as personal struggles, might be part of the constructed cover story. Elements designed to explain away inconsistencies or provide reasons for his movements and perhaps periods of disappearance while he was supposedly operating elsewhere.
And there's that coincidence about their father's deaths.
Yes, that's another striking parallel. Nezahualcoyotl's father, Ixtlaxochtli VI, died in 1418. Nezahualcoyotl was 15 at the time.
Correct.
Coincidentally, Alberti's father, Lorenzo, also purportedly died around 1418, supposedly while trying to escape the plague. Alberti was also 15.
Same year, same age for both sons. Even the detail about escaping plague for Alberti's father. That's specific.
Very specific. For the author, these aren't just random similarities. They're echoes suggesting either deliberate mirroring and fabricated biographies, or indeed a single operative experiencing these life events under different guises.
And the name Pachacuti itself is significant.
Hugely significant if you connect it to the core idea of the watch. The theory posits Pachacuti was the title used for Nezahualcoyotl when he was operating under his Inca identity, Yupanqui, before he supposedly went back to Mexico to found the Aztec civilization.
So Pachacuti wasn't his original Inca name.
According to the source, the name Pachacuti Inca Yupanqui was given to him by locals after he left the region, and the name itself, Pachacuti Inca Yupanqui, translates to "he who overturns space and time."
Wow. Overturns space and time. That's blatant.
It really is. And Pachacuti, just by itself, means cataclysm. This naming convention resonates powerfully with the whole thesis of the watch, orchestrating systemic historical resets and deliberately manipulating chronologies. The name itself embodies their supposed core mechanism.
Okay, this interpretation also connects to the population collapse in the Americas. That's a huge and tragic event in history. How does G fit in?
It's a very chilling part of the theory. The sources note the drastic population drop in the Americas. Estimates range from maybe 50 million down to 8 million, occurring after G supposedly relocated from the Americas back to Italy.
And they're saying that's not a coincidence.
It's explicitly posited as no mere coincidence. Mainstream history attributes the collapse primarily to European diseases introduced after contact, to which native populations had no immunity.
Right, smallpox, measles.
Yeah.
Devastating.
The theory doesn't necessarily dispute the role of disease, but it reframes the context. It suggests this catastrophic biological event aligns with the watch's methods, leveraging crises, exploiting chaos. The implication is that G's departure and the subsequent arrival of Europeans bringing these diseases might have been, well, if not directly orchestrated, then perhaps a foreseen and calculated outcome.
A strategic depopulation.
A potential interpretation within this framework, yes. Perhaps clearing the way for new societal structures, resource control, fitting the watch's global blueprint. It reframes unimaginable human suffering as potentially a manipulated event.
So was G, as Nezahualcoyotl, acting benevolently, or was he just a cold, pragmatic operative?
That's a central question. Was he a benevolent manipulator making hard choices for a greater good, or just ruthlessly pragmatic? The sources suggest Nezahualcoyotl acted with extraordinary foresight and strategic acumen. He seemed to grasp the covert objective of managing these societal resets.
Managing them.
Yes. His actions, which often look like difficult choices or sacrifices from a conventional viewpoint, are interpreted here as consistently aimed at mitigating the long-term damage of these cataclysms, ensuring humanity's survival on a grander scale. He was adhering to this long-term vision, presumably the watch's vision.
And hiding his tracks was crucial, this geographical obfuscation.
Absolutely. To keep the whole operation secret, G's movements had to be untraceable. It's hypothesized that maybe some Inner Circle Watch members knew Albertan's real birthplace, but it's also likely he deliberately spread misinformation about his origins.
To confuse people trying to map his movement.
Exactly. This would have made accurate longitude calculations or tracking impossible at the time, and because cartography was heavily influenced by Ptolemy and later Columbus's ideas about geography weren't quite right, the maps Alberti might have used or created wouldn't have been entirely accurate anyway.
Like a spy leaving false trails.
Precisely. Ensuring his true reach and the watch's influence couldn't be pinned down, keeping him a ghost in the historical machine.
There's also the point about Nezahualcoyotl's personal trauma, witnessing his father's murder.
Yes, that's presented as a potentially powerful motivator. When he was young, the Tepanec army besieged Texcoco. His father, Ixtlahuaxochitl, was cornered and brutally killed right in front of him.
Horrifying.
A profoundly formative trauma. It could be interpreted as forging his strategic mindset, giving him a deep, visceral understanding of societal collapse, the brutality of chaos. It might have fueled a lifelong dedication to preventing that kind of disruption on a larger scale, which aligns perfectly with the watch's stated goal of managing resets and ensuring humanity's continuation, even if by extreme means.
Okay, let's shift to the tools of secrecy. Cryptography. How does G use this across continents? The Voynich Manuscript comes up here, right?
Yes, the Voynich Manuscript is presented as a key piece of evidence, almost a signature.
Okay, let's unpack this one carefully. It's this famously bizarre, undeciphered book full of strange plants and symbols.
Exactly. Handwritten, illustrated, totally unique script. one of history's great unsolved mysteries. But the theory places it directly in G's time frame and orbit.
Oh.
The vellum, the animal skin it's written on, has been carbon dated. The range is 1404 to 1438. That's precisely when Alberti, or G, was active and writing things like his treatise De Ire in 1437. That exact temporal overlap is considered highly significant.
So it's not just a random puzzle, but potentially a deliberate artifact from G.
That's the argument. An intentional flourish, an encrypted message left by a master craftsman, and there are specific links proposed. Well, back in 2014, researchers Tucker and Talbert claimed they identified dozens of plants, some animals, and a mineral depicted in the Voynich drawings that also appear in the Battista manuscript. A 15th century Aztec herbal record. So a direct link between this European manuscript and Aztec knowledge.
Interesting.
And even more specific, the presence of atacamite. It's a copper chloride mineral found in some of the paint pigments. That mineral suggests raw materials originating from Mexico, again linking this European enigma to the Americas.
And the script itself. Any theories on that?
It's hypothesized that some of the characters might represent a form of enciphered Nahuatl.
Nezahualcoyotl's language.
Exactly, his native language from Mesoamerica. The idea is that the syllable signs in the script were designed to work with his specific code-copying linguistic system. Despite tons of effort, mainstream scholarship hasn't cracked it. No hypothesis, natural language, artificial language, elaborate hoax has been proven.
So the fact it remains undeciphered is part of the point.
To the author, yes. It points to deliberate, sophisticated obfuscation by the watch. But crucially, statistical analysis, this was done by Montemurro and Zanet in 2013, showed the glyphs follow Zipf's law.
Meaning?
Meaning, like in any real language, some symbols appear really often, most appear rarely. It's not random gibberish. It strongly implies the text encodes meaningful information in a systematic way. So the Voynich isn't just a frustrating puzzle, it's presented as a signature. An intricate message left by someone who knew that eventually someone might recognize the system.
So it wasn't meant to be hidden forever. More like a time capsule for those in the know.
Possibly. A communication across centuries for those holding the key. The theory suggests it uses a verbose cipher.
Verbose cipher?
Yeah, a complex technique where single letters of the real message are expanded into groups of symbols that look like nonsense or fake messages. Extremely hard to crack without knowing the system. For example, they point to the first two lines of one page, F15V, saying they strongly resemble verbosely enciphered Latin numbers.
And this connects back to Alberti's known work in cryptography.
Yes. Alberti developed sophisticated polyalphabetic ciphers. His systems were specifically designed not to produce texts where all symbols appear equally often that makes basic ciphers easier to break. His methods were far more advanced.
Okay.
In his system, the written words might function more like codes, needing a separate code book. And the structure within the Voynich, some argue, resembles Roman numerals, which would have been a natural choice for G at that time. So the idea is, it's a real text, deliberately obscured by one of G's complex ciphers, operating letter by letter.
But why? Just to show off?
Maybe partly. But the theory suggests a dual purpose, either highly selective communication for authorized spies across generations, or a sophisticated testament to the watch's foresight and intellectual mastery left for a future audience capable of understanding it. An intellectual timestamp.
Okay, now let's jump across the Atlantic again. The Inca and Khipu, you said G introduced this too.
Ironically, yes. Operating as Pachacuti, G is credited with introducing Khipu as the recording system in the Andes.
These are the knotted strings, right? Looks like a textile art piece.
Exactly. Intricate arrangements of knotted cotton strings. But the theory argues they were specifically designed to conceal sensitive intelligence, a tactile physical encryption system, not just for counting llamas.
So how did they hide information?
Well, this is where the vulnerability comes in, right? If the key is all contextual and passed down orally, how secure is it really? Or how easily manipulated? G supposedly used Khipu not just to hide messages, but for practical things too, collecting census data, keeping tax records, tracking calendar dates for rituals or obligations. The cords stored alphanumeric values encoded in the knots, often using a base 10 system like ours.
But the secrecy part, how is that built in?
For the watch, the real security wasn't just the data. It was the system's abstract, multi-layered nature. It functioned as a physical cryptogram. There wasn't one single key. Deciphering it required a complex combination of knowledge. Understanding the different knot types, single knots, long knots, figure 8 knots, the direction they were tied, the specific colors of the cords, how the fibers were plied or twisted together, and the exact spatial relationship between knots and any subsidiary cords branching off.
Well, that's complex.
Extremely. And crucially, the meaning was highly contextual and culturally specific. It relied on shared knowledge accessible only to a select group of initiated operatives. The book points to the Pokecas.
Who are they?
Local merchants who, the theory argues, also functioned as covert spies. They operated with diplomatic immunity, carrying these knotted messages across the empire. Without the specialized, often orally transmitted knowledge for a specific quipu, anyone else would just see a bunch of knotted strings, an unbreakable cipher to outsiders.
Making it perfect for the watch, hiding secrets in plain sight.
Exactly. Seamlessly integrated into the culture, but with an impenetrable layer of secrecy for their own communications.
And the Aztecs had something similar, not quipu, but other coded communication.
Yes, similar principles. It wasn't just complex math. It was embedding secrets in the culture and language itself. The Aztecs used encoded or symbolic communication for cryptographic aims. Knowledge was strictly limited scribes, priests, nobles, creating this powerful knowledge barrier.
How did they encode things?
A lot was oral tradition. They frequently used diffrasismo, these paired metaphors, like saying flower and song to mean poetry. It encoded meaning in a way outsiders wouldn't get. A kind of poetic encryption hiding sensitive information within seemingly normal cultural expressions.
So across the Americas, you have these systems knots, metaphors.
And what's fascinating, the theory argues these weren't independent inventions. They were adaptations of a universal watch-designed cryptographic framework.
Universal, you mean beyond the Americas too?
Yes. Consider parallels in the Old World. Knotted cords for bookkeeping in ancient China. Byzantine tachygraphy, a kind of shorthand. Mediterranean tally cords for counting. The theory suggests these point to a portable toolkit of symbolic record-keeping, customized for each culture, but retaining the same underlying encryption logic that only the watch could recognize. It implies a global methodology for secret communication.
Okay, moving beyond codes to the actual structures of these civilizations. Engineering, cosmology. You mentioned they seemed built from the same blueprint.
Right. Despite being geographically separate, the Aztec and Inca empires showed these striking similarities. Theocratic rule, religious authority in charge, sun worship focus, military expansionism. The theory argues this convergence isn't coincidence, but suggests a common ideological framework, possibly inherited from distant shared origins orchestrated by the watch.
And this connects back to even older mother cultures.
Yes, like the Olmecs in Mesoamerica and the Chavin in the Andes. They're considered foundational cultures. And interestingly, they share motifs like panther or jaguar symbolism and pyramid building, hints of early transcontinental contact or cultural spread.
Any hard evidence for that connection?
Well, the theory points to things like petroglyph alignments, rock carvings at sites like Chavin de Huantar in Peru and La Venta, an Olmec site in Mexico. They apparently share abstract designs, A&D, astronomical orientations that align within 1 degree. That kind of precision, the author argues, is highly improbable if they were designed completely independently. It suggests coordination.
So if this idea of hyperdiffusionism is bright ideas spreading widely from one source, it really challenges the standard model of isolated cultures developing on their own.
It absolutely does. It points towards a deeper shared influence, potentially managed by the watch over long periods.
And this influence stretches back even further, to Siberia 24,000 years ago.
That's the really deep connection proposed. The structural parallels in cosmology, farming techniques, statecraft across these diverse cultures, they imply a hidden ancestral link back to the Maltabure culture.
Maltabure, Upper Paleolithic, Siberia, Lake Baikal, 24,000 years ago. Wow.
Exactly. They're associated with a genetic group called Ancient North Eurasians, ANE. The art from Maltabure is incredibly rich, showing early human symbolic thought. The theory suggests parallels between their art and later mythologies worldwide indicate deep archetypal roots, perhaps subtly guided or seeded by the watch way back then. The threads potentially stretch back millennia.
Is there any genetic basis for this, connecting ancient Siberians to the Americas?
Well, genetics is tricky, especially in Mesoamerica and South America, because the climate makes preserving ancient DNA, aDNA, very difficult. Remains just don't last well. But despite those limits, broader genetic studies do support the general theory that indigenous peoples of the Americas descend from populations related to these ancient Maltabures, hunter-gatherers who crossed the Beringia land bridge. Modern Native Americans show a genetic mix of East Asian and this Maltabure ANE ancestry. So while direct aDNA from specific sites might be scarce, the overall genetic picture provides a plausible biological link supporting these potential deep, ancient connections.
Let's talk about engineering, specifically water management. You said this was key and linked to G.
Yes, controlling water is fundamental to complex civilization. It's not just about grand buildings, it's about managing the lifeblood. Nezahualcoyotl is credited with designing Texcoco, the Athens of the Americas. It had fortified hilltop gardens, aqueducts.
And Alberti was involved with aqueducts in Rome.
Exactly. Pope Nicholas V hired Alberti to renovate the Aqua Virgine, an ancient Roman aqueduct, and the Romans built aqueducts everywhere. This pattern of advanced hydraulic engineering appearing wherever G supposedly operated is highlighted. Tenochtitlan's aqueducts, the massive scale of pyramids like Cholula, attributed to Nezahualcoyotl Pachacuti, it all points to this core principle being understood and manipulated by G.
And similar tech in the Andes.
Yes, mirroring Roman designs almost. The Andean systems like Amuna's mountain channels feeding groundwater and Waru raised agricultural fields and wetlands show incredible sophistication. They parallel Roman innovations like gradient-controlled aqueducts moving water precisely over distance and cistern-fed irrigation.
Different terrains, same underlying mastery of hydraulics.
Precisely. The theory argues this is an independent invention. It's the watch redeploying the same core knowledge base, adapting it locally, but stemming from a central source. A knowledge hub disseminating best practices.
And the buildings themselves aligned with the stars.
Another parallel, Tenochtitlan's Temple Mare, like the Pantheon in Rome or Karnak in Egypt, was oriented to capture sunlight precisely during equinoxes and solstices.
Why?
It wasn't just for show, it reinforced religious and political power by synchronizing city life with the heavens, marrying the sacred calendar to the civic one. This is presented as another blueprint G applied across continents, using celestial harmony to buttress the power structures he was involved in building or influencing.
Okay, so the watch isn't just building things, they're building belief systems, controlling the narrative.
Exactly. That's the core of the deception. The theory argues that the striking similarities we see in myths and cultural frameworks across the globe aren't just about universal human archetypes like Jung suggested.
Oh.
They're also the result of deliberate design, the pervasive spread of a common narrative template orchestrated by the watch. So our shared myths, our moral codes, they might not be organic growths, but engineered constructs.
And the purpose of that?
Standardization. To standardize education, morals, governance across different nations. Think about how humanist ideals, classical learning, human potential got embedded in schools, international bodies, media. The theory suggests this conditioned populations to accept G's carefully crafted remixes of history. It explains why this intellectual movement pushed for studying nature and imitating classical antiquity while simultaneously creating these shared origin stories. It was about guiding development and belief.
Which leads to that really wild idea about ancient ruins, Stonehenge, the pyramids, being fakes.
Not necessarily fakes in the sense they don't exist, but potentially stage props. The theory poses a provocative question. What if many prehistoric remains found in Earth's most mysterious structures aren't alien or divine, but products of Renaissance classified operations, deliberately designed to create a false sense of extreme antiquity?
Elaborate stage dressing for a historical play written centuries ago. Wow.
It reframes everything we think of as ancient mystery.
Even something iconic like the Parthenon and the Golden Ratio.
Yes, even that gets questioned. The Parthenon, 447 BC, supposedly designed using phi, the golden ratio, an architectural icon. But the theory asks, how did the Italians supposedly lose the knowledge of Roman architecture, like from Vitruvius, only to conveniently find it again right when the Renaissance needed it?
Oh.
And it claims the use of E in antiquity might be a misunderstanding, maybe conflating it with the golden mean, the Greek philosophical idea of balance, avoiding excess, rather than the specific mathematical ratio we understand today, suggesting the watch reintroduced or reinterpreted this knowledge later to fit their narrative of rediscovery.
It's that pattern again, isn't it? Lost and found knowledge.
Exactly. Knowledge appears, vanishes, then conveniently reappears when the watch's timeline requires it. Like Roman concrete. Vitruvius wrote about it. It was used extensively in the 1st century, then supposedly lost until the Renaissance. This recurring pattern is presented as evidence of the watch controlling the flow of information, making orchestrated introductions look like organic rediscovery.
And this control extends to finance, even fabricating mathematicians. Fibonacci?
That's another bombshell in the theory. Fibonacci, Leonardo of Pisa, around 1170–1240. Hailed as brilliant, right? Popularized Hindu-Arabic numerals in Europe with his Liber Abaci, introduced the Fibonacci sequence, 0, 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, which embodies the golden ratio, crucial for banking, double-entry bookkeeping.
Foundational stuff.
But the book asserts his very name, Fibonacci, was fabricated by Franco-Italian historians much later in 1838.
Really?
It claims the first documented mention of a Leonardo Fibonacci only appears around 1506 in the era of Luca Pacioli. And it was Pacioli's work in 1509 that provided the first clear, concrete mathematical evidence of, distinct from just the philosophical golden mean.
So Fibonacci himself might be a historical construct.
The theory suggests the whole narrative around him was likely a retroactive fabrication, created later to provide a plausible, celebrated origin story for mathematical principles already in use, and crucially, to bolster the watch's reconstructed historical timeline, making it look like organic progress. How many other discoveries might have been carefully placed like this?
It's like they had a knowledge tap, turning it on and off to fit their plans.
That's the analogy used, and it applies elsewhere too. Concepts like trigonometry attributed to Greeks like Hipparchus and Ptolemy, then they seem to pop up centuries later in Sanskrit texts in India before returning to Renaissance Europe as if rediscovered.
A closed loop.
Suggesting not simple diffusion, but controlled recycling. The watch deciding when and where advancements would surface, managing the pace of intellectual development globally.
And this financial tech, like bookkeeping, emerges just as maritime empires rise.
The timing is highlighted as significant. The resurgence of sophisticated financial tools coincided precisely with Venice, Genoa, Portugal becoming major sea powers.
Coincidence?
The theory says no. By channeling these banking innovations through these naval powers, the watch could integrate money flows with exploration fleets. Conquest, trade, historical narrative shaping, all advancing together, perfectly coordinated. A master strategy linking economic power, military might, and historical engineering.
Even calendars weren't safe. Mayan and Aztec calendars manipulated.
That's another layer. It's unsettling, the idea that the very way ancient cultures tracked time might have been tweaked. The theory points to the golden ratio, showing up in correlations between European dates and the Mayan and similar Aztec long-count calendars.
How does that work?
They used multiple calendars, like the 260-day Tzolk'in sacred and 365-day Hab civil. Historical texts like the Annals of the Caxicos from Guatemala directly link Tzolk'in dates to European dates. Example: Fall of Tenochtitlan, August 13, 1521, corresponds to the Tzolk'in date Serpent 1.
Okay.
The question raised is, did later watch spies just use this existing correlation? Or did G or others deliberately create these correlations within indigenous calendars to subtly embed their influence, maybe hinting at a predetermined destiny aligned with European timelines?
And Columbus might have exploited this. Mayan end times prophecies.
That's proposed, that Columbus in 1502 tapped into Mayan eschatology, believing his arrival fulfilled prophecy and heralded the world's end. This could explain the widespread end times fear during the Spanish conquest, making people more vulnerable.
How does the long count fit in?
Breaking the Maya Code discusses the long count system counting days from a mythical start date, August 11, 3114 BC. There's a specific correlation factor, the GMT or 11.1 seam correlation, that precisely aligns the long count with European dates. This correlation itself becomes suspect within the theory. Was it discovered or created? The evidence cited blends historical, astronomical, and archaeological findings to support this idea of pervasive watch influence.
So the watch's main psychological trick is the end of the world narrative.
It's presented as their most consistent PSYOP, because, as the author notes, no narrative grips the human mind more tightly than the belief that the end is near.
Yeah.
The theme is always this zero-footprint detachment, a final battle, a cataclysm, where the watch orchestrates it but leaves no trace of their involvement. We see it everywhere. Norse Ragnarok, Hindu Kali Yuga, Christian Revelation, the Mesoamerican Five Suns myth.
Where each sun or world age ends in disaster.
Exactly. It fits the pattern perfectly. And many of these apocalypses describe actual celestial alignments, planets, stars that can be matched to real dates using astronomy software, making them seem divinely predicted.
And G himself was writing these.
In his role as a canon in Florence, he's believed to have dedicated himself to crafting these meticulous apocalyptic narratives, syncing them with real celestial events, providing a powerful, seemingly divine justification for the societal resets the watch wanted to manage. This repetition across continents suggests a standardized template designed to condition people for cycles of destruction and renewal, allowing the watch to guide the transitions, pre-programming humanity using the cosmos itself.
And spies spread these ideas globally.
Yes, the numerous instances of strikingly similar cultural practices across oceans, argued not to be independent invention but widespread diffusion, orchestrated by watch spies systematically spreading these engineered narratives and practices, creating an interconnected world but one built on controlled information.
Which implies no civilization was truly untouched. The watch got everywhere.
That's the claim. Nezahualcoyotl, G, appears to have extended his network and influence more broadly than anyone had previously attempted. His documented transoceanic contacts hint at hyperdiffusionism, often dismissed, but here used to explain anomalous similarities. The contention is stark. All significant civilizations at some key point were compromised or infiltrated by this hidden network. No true isolation, all threads in the watch's global tapestry.
And they use crises like the Black Death, leverage the chaos.
Yes, the figure called the Mole strategically took control during periods of crisis. The Black Death swept through cities. Conventional estimates are 40–70 million dead, but likely higher given the smaller global population then.
Unimaginable scale.
And the theory suggests the long duration of this high mortality period gave the watch's spies an extended window, a chance to reorder society according to their plans, using the devastation as a kind of reset button. It's a chilling calculus. Mass human suffering viewed as a strategic opportunity.
Is there any physical proof? You mentioned that Roman head found in Mexico.
The Tecáxic-Calixtlahuaca head, yes, that's presented as compelling physical evidence. Unearthed in 1933 among pre-Columbian burial items near Mexico City, a Roman-style head. That alone is anomalous. Re-examined in 2001 by Christophe and Genovese, their research strongly pointed to pre-Columbian transatlantic contact. And crucially, a thermoluminescence test dating the object itself was done by the German Institute of Archaeology in Rome.
And the date?
It placed its creation between the 9th century BC and the mid-13th century AD, well before Columbus. A Roman-style object in Mexico, potentially centuries before accepted European arrival. It screams for a different explanation and supports the idea of ancient, covert global links.
And finally, the watch supposedly controlled key inventions. Printing press, firearms, compass.
Yes, these three are asserted to be intrinsically linked to the watch, not just random tech advances, but the primary instruments for enacting historical revisionism and global control, the strategic tools for reshaping the world and its history.
More than just tools, they shifted power itself.
Absolutely, a profound paradigm shift. They enabled secure communication over distance, cryptography aided by press, unprecedented projection of force, firearms, and reliable global travel compass. Mastering these signaled the watch had surpassed the ancients.
And ancient inventions might have been refined by the watch?
That's suggested. Many revered Greco-Roman inventions might actually be refined reasons of earlier maritime technologies, perfected and then strategically deployed by the watch. Like they took old ideas, polished them, used them to build their empire of influence, and covered their tracks.
By attributing the inventions to earlier times.
Precisely. Retroactive attribution. The theory argues these technologies were developed by the watch, then deliberately credited to much earlier civilizations to create that fabricated historical continuum, a seamless but artificial progression. With these tools, they extended their influence everywhere and rewrote the record. It positions the entire body of ancient global achievements as potentially a product of coordinated Gothic intelligence, hidden behind the illusion of vast, independent historical depth. If history is a museum, who really designed the exhibits and wrote the labels?
So after all that, what does this mean for us listening to this? We've gone through a theory where history isn't discovered, it's designed. Polymaths are spies, plagues are weapons.
It's a complete inversion of the standard narrative.
And watch this covert group orchestrating a massive deception. Alberti playing these incredible multi-continental roles, weaving a false story to serve hidden agendas, controlling knowledge, shaping societies for centuries. It's a lot.
It absolutely is. And this deep dive really forces us, doesn't it, to look at historical patterns differently, not as coincidences, but potentially as deliberate designs. It makes you wonder, if the past was manipulated so thoroughly, what does that mean for how we understand our present? And maybe even our future?
Yeah.
It compels you to question what you accept as historical fact and to at least consider the possibility of these deeper, hidden forces trying to shape the narrative even now.
Well, the deep dive is always about giving you that shortcut to being informed, sparking those aha moments, maybe even, moments that make you rethink things. If this conversation has you questioning accepted history, digging into those hidden patterns, well, that's exactly the point.
It certainly provides ample food for thought.
And for those of you who really want to go down this rabbit hole, explore the full arguments, the evidence laid out, you can find the entire audiobook and supplemental material directly from the author, Michael Anthony Alberta. His website is michaelanthonyalberta.com. Definitely a gold mine if this has piqued your curiosity.